On Independence Day night in an empty house, a man stands before a choice that will shape his life forever. Lila Carter, the girl he once knew, now broken and desperate, makes an offer most men wouldn't refuse. But Daniel Hayes isn't most men. He's a single father, carrying the wound of betrayal, and he sees what she doesn't. She doesn't need to be desired. She needs to be cherished. In a moment that could destroy a friendship and everything he's built, Daniel makes a decision that will change everything. Follow this story to the end. Like and comment where you're watching to let me know how far the story has progressed. This is a story about true love. It starts from the heart. The deck creaked under Daniel Hayes's boots, the old wood protesting every step. He crouched down, inspecting the loose boards with a flashlight, sweat still clinging to his shirt from the July heat. The fireworks had ended hours ago, their echoes fading into the quiet night, and everyone had gone home. Everyone except him. He'd stayed behind because that's what Daniel did. His best friend Marcus owned this house, and when Marcus mentioned the deck was getting dangerous, Daniel had volunteered without thinking. It was easier than going home to an empty apartment, easier than sitting alone after his daughter Emma had gone to bed at her grandmother's place for the weekend. The truth was, Daniel didn't mind the work. At 32, he'd learned that keeping his hands busy kept his mind from wandering into places he didn't want it to go. Places like the memory of his ex-wife, Sarah, walking out 3 years ago with barely a backward glance. Places like the fear that he was failing Emma somehow, that being a single father wasn't enough. He hammered another nail into place, the sound sharp in the stillness. "You're still here." Daniel nearly dropped the hammer. He turned, squinting against the porch light. Lila Carter stood in the doorway, barefoot, wearing an oversized sweater that hung off one shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, strands escaping around her face. She looked different from earlier in the evening when she'd been laughing with the others, a drink in her hand, pretending everything was fine. Now she just looked tired. "Yeah," Daniel said, straightening up. "Marcus mentioned the deck was about to give out. Figured I'd take care of it." "At midnight? Better than waiting for someone to fall through." Lila stepped out onto the porch, wrapping her arms around herself despite the warmth. "Marcus went to bed an hour ago. He doesn't even know you're still out here." Daniel shrugged. "He will in the morning." She studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. They'd known each other for years. She was Marcus's younger cousin, someone who'd always been around at family gatherings, though Daniel had never paid much attention. She'd been in college when he'd first met her, confident and untouchable, the kind of person who seemed to glide through life without friction. But something had changed. She'd moved back to town 2 months ago, and the confidence was gone. There was a brittleness to her now, like she was holding herself together with sheer willpower. "Can I sit?" she asked. "It's not my porch." She sat anyway, lowering herself onto the steps and tucking her knees up under the sweater. Daniel hesitated, then set down the hammer and joined her, leaving a respectful distance between them. For a while, neither of them spoke. The neighborhood was silent except for the distant hum of cicadas and the occasional car passing on the main road. "Do you remember Josh?" Lila asked suddenly. Daniel frowned. "Your ex?" "Yeah." "I remember Marcus mentioning him. You two were together a long time, right? 5 years?" She said it flatly, like she was reciting a fact that had lost all meaning. "We broke up 3 months ago." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." She picked at the hem of her sweater. It needed to happen. Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. He'd learned that silence was often better than empty platitudes. Lila tilted her head back, staring up at the sky. "You ever feel like you don't know who you are anymore? Like you spent so long being what someone else wanted that you forgot what you wanted?" "Yeah," Daniel said quietly. "I have." She glanced at him, surprised. "Really?" "My ex-wife, Sarah. She left 3 years ago." He exhaled slowly, the old wound still tender despite the time. "Said she didn't sign up for this life, the kid, the responsibility, the routine. She wanted something else." "What did she want?" "I don't know. She never said. Just packed her things and left." He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the familiar ache. "Took me a long time to stop wondering if I could have been different, if I could have been enough." Lila's voice softened. "And now?" "Now I know it wasn't about me. It was about her, but knowing that doesn't make it easier." She nodded slowly, like she understood. "Josh was controlled. Everything had to be perfect. The way I dressed, the way I acted, even when we... She stopped, shaking her head. It doesn't matter. It does if it still bothers you. Of course it bothers me. Her voice cracked just a little. 5 years, Daniel. 5 years of feeling like I was failing some test I didn't even know I was taking. And at the end of it, he looked at me like I was disposable. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't know Josh, but he already hated him. He had this way of making everything feel like a transaction, Lila continued, her words spilling out now like she'd been holding them in too long. Even sex. It was scheduled. Tuesdays and Saturdays, like clockwork. And if I wanted more or wanted it to mean something, he'd get annoyed, said I was being needy. Daniel felt a flash of anger on her behalf, but he kept his voice calm. That's not love. I know that now, she laughed bitterly. But when you're in it, you convince yourself it's normal, that maybe you're the problem. You're not the problem, Lila. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. Vulnerability mixed with something else, something desperate. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Do you think I'm attractive? Daniel blinked, caught off guard. What? It's a simple question. She turned toward him, her eyes searching his face. Do you think I'm attractive? Lila, I just need to know. Her voice was trembling now, her composure cracking. Because Josh made me feel like I wasn't, like I was too much work, too demanding, and I need to know if that's true, if I'm... You're beautiful, Daniel said firmly, cutting her off. Anyone can see that. She let out a shaky breath, tears welling in her eyes. Then why did he make me feel so ugly? Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to reach out, to offer some kind of comfort, but he kept his hands where they were. Because he's an idiot who didn't deserve you. I don't feel beautiful, she whispered. I feel broken. You're not broken. Then prove it. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and dangerous. Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. What are you asking me? Lila wiped at her eyes, her voice barely audible. I'm asking you to touch me, to make me feel like I'm not worthless. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. He understood what she was asking, and every instinct in his body screamed at him to say no. Not because he didn't find her attractive, he did. Not because he didn't want to help her, he did. But because he knew, with absolute certainty, that giving in would be the worst thing he could do. Lila, he said gently, I can't. Her face crumpled. Why not? Because that's not what you need. You don't know what I need. I think I do. He shifted closer, careful not to touch her. You're hurting, and you're looking for something to take the pain away, even if it's just for a little while. But this, what you're asking for, it won't help. It'll just make you feel worse. You don't know that. I do. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. Because I've been where you are. After Sarah left, I was a mess. And I made some bad choices trying to prove I was still worth something. But those choices didn't fix me. They just made me feel emptier. Lila's tears were falling freely now, and she didn't bother wiping them away. I just want to feel wanted. I know. Daniel's throat tightened. But you're asking the wrong question. It's not about being wanted. It's about being valued. And I can tell you right now, you deserve more than some guy using you to make yourself feel better for a night. I'm not asking for forever, she said desperately. I'm just asking for right now. And what about tomorrow? Daniel asked. What happens when you wake up and realize it didn't fix anything? What happens when you look at me and see just another guy who took what you offered without caring what it cost you? She flinched, and he knew he'd hit a nerve. I don't want to be that guy, he said quietly. And I don't think you really want me to be either. For a long moment, Lila didn't say anything. She just sat there, trembling, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold the pieces together. Then, slowly, she reached out. Daniel didn't move as her hand found his. Her fingers were cold, trembling, and he could feel the weight of everything she was carrying in that simple touch. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. You don't have to fix it tonight, Daniel said. He squeezed her hand gently, grounding her. You just have to get through tonight, and then tomorrow you get through that, one day at a time. That sounds exhausting. It is, He offered a faint smile. But it gets easier. Lila let out a shaky laugh, tears still streaming down her face. You're a good person, Daniel. I'm just trying to do the right thing. Most people wouldn't. Then most people are idiots. She laughed again, a little stronger this time, and for the first time all night, Daniel saw a flicker of the person she used to be. Not the confident, untouchable girl from years ago, but someone softer, someone real. They sat there for a while longer, her hand in his, neither of them speaking. The night stretched around them, quiet and endless, and Daniel felt the weight of the decision he'd just made settle over him like a blanket. He knew this moment could change everything. He knew Marcus might never forgive him if he found out. He knew Lila might wake up tomorrow and regret ever asking, might hate him for saying no, might disappear from his life entirely. But he also knew, deep in his bones, that he'd made the right choice. Because Lila didn't need someone to use her. She needed someone to see her. And tonight, for the first time in a long time, someone had. Eventually, Lila pulled her hand away and stood, wiping at her face. I should go to bed. Yeah, Daniel said, rising beside her. Me too. She hesitated at the door, glancing back at him. Thank you. For what? For not being like him. Daniel's chest ached. You don't have to thank me for that. She nodded, then disappeared inside, leaving him alone on the porch. He stood there for a long time, staring out at the empty street, his mind spinning. Then he picked up the hammer, finished securing the last board, and headed home. The weekend passed in a blur. Daniel spent Saturday with Emma, taking her to the park and listening to her chatter about everything and nothing. She was 6 years old, full of energy and innocence, and being with her always reminded him why he kept going, why he stayed disciplined, why he didn't give in to shortcuts or easy answers. She was his anchor, his reason. But even as he pushed her on the swings and helped her collect dandelions, his mind kept drifting back to Lila, to the look in her eyes when she'd asked him to prove she wasn't worthless, to the weight of her hand in his. He wondered if he'd done the right thing. He wondered if she was okay. He didn't hear from her, no calls, no texts, and he didn't reach out either. He figured she needed space, time to process whatever she was feeling. But on Monday morning, when he dropped Emma off at daycare and headed to the construction site where he worked, he found a text waiting for him. Can we talk? It was from Lila. Daniel stared at the screen for a long moment, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then he typed back, Yeah. When? Her response came almost immediately. Tonight? Same place? He hesitated, then replied, Okay. Marcus's house looked different in the daylight. The deck Daniel had repaired was solid now, the new boards gleaming in the late afternoon sun. He sat on the steps, waiting, his hands clasped between his knees. When Lila arrived, she looked different too. She was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair down, and there was a calmness to her that hadn't been there before. Not peace exactly, but something steadier. She sat beside him, close but not touching. I'm sorry, she said. Daniel frowned. For what? For putting you in that position. For asking you to... She shook her head. It wasn't fair. You don't have to apologize. I do. She looked at him, her eyes clear. I was a mess that night, and I put you in a situation where you had to be the grown-up, and that wasn't right. Lila, you were hurting. People do things when they're hurting. That doesn't make it okay. Daniel exhaled slowly. Maybe not, but I'm not mad at you. You should be. Well, I'm not. She smiled faintly, and for a moment they just sat there, the weight of the unspoken hanging between them. I've been thinking a lot, Lila said finally, about what you said, about being valued instead of wanted. Yeah? And I think you were right. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I've been so focused on trying to prove I'm desirable that I forgot to ask if I even like the person I'm trying to be desirable for. Daniel nodded. That's a good place to start. I don't know who I am anymore, she admitted. I spent so long being Josh's girlfriend that I lost track of Lila. And now that he's gone, I don't know what's left. Then maybe it's time to find out. She looked at him, something hopeful flickering in her expression. How? One step at a time. Daniel leaned back, resting his elbows on the step behind him. You don't have to have it all figured out today. Just start asking yourself what you want. What makes you happy? what you believe in. That sounds hard. It is, but it's worth it. Lila was quiet for a moment, then said, "Can I ask you something else?" "Sure. Do you think we could be friends?" Daniel's eyebrows rose. "You want to be friends?" "I know it's weird," she said quickly, "after everything, but I feel like you're the only person who sees me right now, and I could use a friend who doesn't treat me like I'm about to shatter." Daniel considered it. Being friends with Lila would be complicated. It would mean seeing her regularly, navigating whatever this strange connection was between them. And there was always the risk that Marcus would find out about what had happened and misunderstand. But when he looked at her, really looked at her, he saw someone who needed exactly what he'd needed 3 years ago. Someone who believed she was worth the effort. "Yeah," he said, "we can be friends." Her smile was small but genuine. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I'm terrible at remembering birthdays." She laughed, and the sound was lighter than anything he'd heard from her before. "Mas man." Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. It started small, texts here and there, mostly Lila checking in to say she'd had a good day or asking Daniel for advice on something mundane. Then it grew into coffee meetings, quick lunches on his break from the construction site, evening walks when Emma was with her grandmother. They talked about everything and nothing. Lila told him about her job at a marketing firm, how she'd been going through the motions for months but was starting to care again. Daniel told her about Emma, about the way she insisted on wearing mismatched socks because she thought it was funny, about how she'd started asking questions about her mom that he didn't know how to answer. And slowly, carefully, they built something that felt like trust. But it wasn't without tension. There were moments when Daniel caught Lila looking at him a certain way, her gaze lingering a little too long. Moments when he felt the pull of something unspoken between them, something that went beyond friendship but hadn't been named yet. He ignored it, because naming it would mean risking everything they'd built, and he wasn't ready for that. Neither was she. One evening, they drove out to a state park just outside town, parking near a trail that wound through the woods. The sun was setting, casting everything in shades of gold and amber, and the air smelled like pine and earth. "I used to come here when I was a kid," Lila said as they walked. "My dad would bring me and Marcus. We'd hike for hours." "Do you still talk to your dad?" "Sometimes." Her voice was careful. "He remarried a few years ago. We're not as close as we used to be." "That's hard." "Yeah." She kicked a loose stone on the path. "But it's okay. I've learned that people change. Relationships change. You can't hold on to the past forever." Daniel glanced at her. "You sound like you've been doing some thinking." "I have." She smiled, a little shy. "I've been seeing a therapist." "Yeah?" "Started 2 weeks ago. It's intense, but good." "I'm glad." "She asked me about you," Lila said. Daniel's steps faltered. "Me?" "Yeah, I told her about that night, about what you said." She looked at him, her expression open. "She said you probably saved my life." "That's a little dramatic." "Is it?" Lila stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "Daniel, I was in a really dark place. And you didn't take advantage of that. You could have. Most people would have. But you didn't." Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets, uncomfortable with the weight of her gratitude. "I just did what anyone should do." "But they don't," she said softly. "That's the point. You're different." He didn't know what to say to that, so he started walking again, and she fell into step beside him. Well, it was early August when things shifted. Daniel had Emma for the weekend, and on a whim, he invited Lila to join them at the community pool. She'd hesitated at first. Meeting Emma felt like crossing a line, but eventually she'd agreed. Emma, predictably, loved her. "You're really pretty," Emma announced within 5 minutes of meeting Lila, her 6-year-old bluntness on full display. Lila laughed, crouching down to Emma's level. "Thank you. You're pretty too." "I know." Emma grinned, showing off a missing front tooth. "Daddy says I look like my mom." Lila glanced at Daniel, who gave a faint shrug. "Your mom must be beautiful," Lila said. "She is, but she doesn't live with us anymore." Emma said it matter-of-factly, like she was reciting the weather. "Daddy says she's on an adventure." Daniel's chest tightened. He tried to explain Sarah's absence in a way Emma could understand, but the truth, that her mother had simply left, was too harsh for a 6-year-old. "Well," Lila said gently, "it sounds like your dad is doing a pretty good job taking care of you." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "He's the best. He makes me pancakes on Sundays and lets me pick the syrup." Lila smiled, and when she stood, Daniel saw something in her eyes that made his heart ache. Not pity, but something softer. Understanding, maybe, or respect. They spent the afternoon at the pool, Emma splashing and laughing while Daniel and Lila sat on the edge, their feet dangling in the water. It felt easy, natural, like they'd been doing this for years. And for the first time since Sarah left, Daniel let himself imagine what it might be like to have someone beside him. Not just anyone. Lila. But he pushed the thought away. It was too soon. For both of them. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Daniel sat on his apartment's small balcony, a beer in hand. His phone buzzed with a text from Lila. "Thank you for today. Emma is wonderful." He smiled, typing back, "She liked you too." A pause, then, "I liked being there." Daniel stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then he typed, "Me too." Another pause, longer this time. "Can I tell you something?" "Yeah. I think I'm starting to figure out who I am again." Daniel's chest swelled with something he couldn't name. "I'm glad. It's because of you." He frowned, typing quickly. "It's not because of me. It's because of you. You did the work. But you showed me it was worth doing." Daniel didn't know how to respond to that, so he set the phone down and leaned back in his chair, staring up at the stars. For the first time in a long time, he felt something like hope. And somewhere across town, Lila felt it too. August bled into September, and the rhythm between Daniel and Lila deepened in ways neither of them had planned. What had started as cautious friendship began to feel like something else, something unspoken that hummed beneath every conversation, every shared silence. Daniel felt it most acutely on the nights when Emma was with her grandmother, and his apartment felt too quiet. He'd find himself reaching for his phone, scrolling to Lila's name, then setting it down without calling. Because calling would mean admitting that he wanted to hear her voice, and admitting that felt dangerous. But Lila called him anyway. "Hey," she said one Thursday evening, her voice bright but uncertain. "Are you busy?" Daniel was sitting on his couch, halfway through a rerun of a game he'd already watched. "Not really. What's up?" "I just got home from therapy and I'm—" She paused, and he could hear her moving around, the sound of keys dropping on a counter. "I don't know. Restless, I guess. Can we talk?" "Yeah, of course." She exhaled, and he heard the scrape of a chair. "Dr. Brennan asked me today what I was afraid of." "What'd you say?" I didn't know how to answer. Her voice was quieter now, more vulnerable. "I mean, I know I'm afraid of a lot of things. Being alone. Being too much. Not being enough." But she kept pushing, asking what the root was, and I finally said, "I'm afraid I'll never trust anyone again." Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "That's not unreasonable." She said something that stuck with me, though. Lila hesitated. She said fear's just information. It tells you what matters to you, and if I'm afraid of never trusting anyone, it means trust still matters, that I haven't given up on it. She sounds smart. She is. Lila laughed softly. She also said I should probably stop texting you at midnight asking if you think my haircut looks bad. Daniel grinned despite himself. "I told you it looked fine." "You said it looked like hair." "Because it does. It's hair. On your head. What else am I supposed to say?" She laughed again, and the sound loosened something in his chest. "You're terrible at compliments." "I know." They talked for another hour, about nothing and everything. Lila told him about a project at work that was driving her crazy, about a coworker who kept leaving passive-aggressive notes in the break room. Daniel told her about Emma's latest obsession with dinosaurs, how she'd insisted on wearing a T-Rex costume to daycare 3 days in a row. And when they finally hung up, Daniel sat in the dark for a long time, staring at his phone. He was in trouble. He knew it. Because somewhere between fixing Marcus's deck and sitting beside Lila at the pool, he'd started caring about her in a way that went beyond friendship, and he didn't know what to do with that. The next morning, Marcus called. Hey man, Marcus said, his voice casual. You free this weekend? Thought we could grab a beer, watch the game. Daniel hesitated. He and Marcus had been best friends since high school, the kind of friendship that didn't require constant maintenance, but was always there when it mattered. But lately, Daniel had been avoiding him, afraid that Marcus would pick up on something Daniel wasn't ready to explain. Yeah, Daniel said finally. I can do that. Cool. Saturday night? Works for me. When Saturday came, Daniel dropped Emma off at her grandmother's and met Marcus at a sports bar downtown. The place was loud, crowded, filled with the smell of fried food and the roar of competing televisions. They grabbed a booth in the back, ordered beers and wings, and settled in. For the first quarter, they talked about safe things. Work. Emma. The Broncos' chances this season. But halfway through the second quarter, Marcus set down his beer and looked at Daniel with the kind of directness that always meant trouble. So, Marcus said, you and Lila. Daniel's stomach dropped. What about us? Come on, man. You've been hanging out with her a lot. We're friends. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Just friends? Yeah, just friends. Daniel forced himself to meet Marcus's gaze, even though his heart was hammering. She's been going through a rough time. I'm helping her out. Helping her out, Marcus repeated, his tone skeptical. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've known you a long time, Daniel, and I've seen the way you look at her. Daniel felt heat rise in his face. I don't look at her anyway. You do. Marcus leaned back, studying him. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Lila's great, she's family, but she's also my cousin, and she just got out of a bad relationship. So if you're thinking about making a move, I'm not making a move, Daniel said sharply. Okay. I'm serious, Marcus. We're friends. That's it. Marcus didn't look convinced, but he let it drop, turning his attention back to the game. And Daniel sat there, his beer growing warm in his hand, feeling like a liar. Because the truth was, he'd thought about making a move. He'd thought about it more than he wanted to admit. But every time he did, he remembered the look on Lila's face that night on the porch. The desperation, the pain, the way she'd been willing to give herself away just to feel something. And he knew that whatever happened between them, it couldn't start like that. It had to start from something real. The game ended, and they paid the tab and walked out into the cool night air. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder as they reached their cars. Look, Marcus said, I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I just care about her, you know? She's been through a lot. I know. And you're a good guy, Daniel. One of the best. But if you're going to be in her life, just be careful. Don't mess with her head. Daniel nodded, swallowing against the tightness in his throat. I won't. Marcus studied him for another moment, then nodded. Good. They said their goodbyes and Daniel drove home in silence, Marcus's words echoing in his head. The following week, Lila texted him out of the blue. Are you free tonight? Daniel was at the construction site, taking a break between pouring concrete. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and typed back, Yeah, what's up? I want to show you something. Can you meet me at 7? Where? She sent him an address, a park on the east side of town he'd never been to. Okay, he replied. See you then. When he arrived that evening, the sun was just starting to set, painting the sky in streaks of pink and orange. Lila was waiting by a picnic table near the edge of a small lake, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Hey, she said, smiling as he approached. Hey, he glanced around. What's this about? You'll see. She grabbed a small backpack from the table and started walking toward the lake. Come on, Daniel followed, curious. They walked along a narrow trail that wound through the trees, the sound of their footsteps muffled by fallen leaves. After a few minutes, the trail opened up into a clearing, and Lila stopped. This, she said, gesturing around them, is where I used to come when I was a kid. When things got too loud at home, I'd ride my bike out here and just sit, think. Daniel looked around. The clearing was small, bordered by tall pines, with a view of the lake through the gaps in the trees. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of place that felt removed from the rest of the world. It's nice, he said. I haven't been here in years. Lila set down her backpack and sat on the ground, patting the spot beside her. But I've been thinking a lot about the things that used to make me happy, before Josh, before I lost myself. And this place kept coming up. Daniel sat beside her, leaving a small space between them. So you came back? I came back. She pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. And it still feels the same, like nothing's changed. That's good, right? I think so. She glanced at him, her expression soft. I wanted to share it with you because you've been helping me remember who I was. And I thought, I don't know. I thought you should see this part of me. Daniel's chest tightened. Thank you. They sat in silence for a while, watching the light fade over the lake. The air was cooling, and Daniel could smell the faint scent of pine and earth, could hear the distant call of birds settling in for the night. Can I ask you something? Lila said eventually. Yeah. Why did you say no that night? Daniel turned to look at her, surprised. What? On the porch. When I asked you to... She stopped, biting her lip. You could have said yes. A lot of guys would have. But you didn't, and I've been trying to understand why. Daniel exhaled slowly, choosing his words carefully. Because it wouldn't have been real. What do you mean? You weren't asking me because you wanted me, he said. You were asking because you wanted to feel wanted, and there's a difference. Lila looked down at her hands. You're right. I didn't want to be just another guy who used you when you were vulnerable. I wanted... He stopped, unsure how much to say. You wanted what? She prompted gently. I wanted you to see yourself the way I saw you, he said quietly, as someone worth more than that. Her eyes glistened, and she blinked rapidly. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. Good. She turned to face him fully, her voice trembling. Daniel, I need to tell you something. His pulse quickened. Okay. I'm scared, she said. I'm scared because I'm starting to feel things for you that I didn't plan on feeling. And I don't know if that's real or if it's just, I don't know, gratitude or rebound or something broken in me looking for someone to fix it. Daniel felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. Lila, let me finish. She took a shaky breath. I don't want to mess this up, whatever this is, because you've been so patient with me, and I don't want to ruin it by pushing for something you don't want. Who says I don't want it? The words were out before he could stop them. Her eyes widened. What? Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his heart pounding. I didn't say no that night because I didn't want you. I said no because the timing was wrong. Because you needed a friend, not whatever that would have been. And now? Her voice was barely a whisper. Now I don't know. He met her gaze, forcing himself to be honest. I care about you, Lila. A lot. But I'm terrified of screwing this up, of hurting you, of making you feel like I'm just another guy who... You're not, she said fiercely. You're nothing like him. How do you know? Because you're here, her voice cracked. Because you turned me down when you could have said yes. Because you've spent weeks helping me put myself back together without asking for anything in return. Daniel shook his head. That doesn't make me special. That just makes me decent. Maybe, she said, but decent is pretty damn rare. They stared at each other, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Daniel wanted to reach for her, to close the distance and see what happened, but he held himself back, afraid that one wrong move would shatter whatever fragile thing they were building. I need to know something, Lila said finally. What? If we did this, if we tried, would it be real for you? Or would I just be a project? The question hit him like a punch to the gut. You're not a project. Then what am I? Daniel swallowed hard. You're someone I think about when I shouldn't, someone I want to call at the end of a long day just to hear what you have to say. Someone who makes me feel like maybe I'm not as broken as I thought I was. Her breath hitched. Daniel. But I'm scared too, he admitted, because I have Emma to think about. And if this goes wrong, it's not just us who get hurt. It's her, and I can't... His voice broke. I can't put her through that again. Lila reached out, her hand hovering over his. I wouldn't do that to her. Or to you. You don't know that. People change. Feelings change. I know. Her hand settled gently on top of his. But we don't have to figure it all out tonight. We can take it slow, see what happens. Daniel looked down at their hands, at the way her fingers curled around his, tentative but sure, and he realized that this was the moment. The one where he either stepped forward or stayed where he was, safe but alone. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. "Okay," he said. Slow. Her smile was tremulous but real. Slow. They sat there as the last light faded, their hands clasped together, neither of them speaking. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt something like peace. Over the next few weeks, they tested the waters carefully. Dinners that felt like dates but weren't called dates. Texts that lingered a little longer, said a little more. Moments where their hands would brush and neither of them would pull away. But they didn't rush. Daniel made sure of that, because rushing meant risking everything, and he wasn't willing to gamble with something that mattered this much. One Saturday afternoon, Lila came over to Daniel's apartment while Emma was at a birthday party. She brought groceries and insisted on cooking dinner, even though Daniel tried to argue that his kitchen was barely functional. "You have a stove and a cutting board," she said, pulling ingredients out of a bag. "That's all I need." Daniel leaned against the counter, watching as she moved around the small space with surprising ease. "You cook a lot?" "I used to, before Josh." She paused, her hand stilling over a bell pepper. "He didn't like when I cooked, said it made the apartment smell." Daniel frowned. "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." She laughed, the sound lighter than it would have been a month ago. "Yeah, it is." They worked together, Lila chopping vegetables while Daniel followed her instructions, trying not to burn the garlic she'd entrusted him with. It was easy, comfortable, the kind of domestic rhythm that felt both new and familiar. "So," Lila said as she stirred the pan, "tell me about Sarah." Daniel stiffened. "What do you want to know?" "I don't know. Anything. You've heard all about Josh, but I don't really know what happened with her." Daniel leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms. "There's not much to tell. We got married young, too young probably, and for a while it was good, but then Emma came and everything changed." "Changed how?" "Sarah didn't want to be a mom," he said bluntly. "She thought she did. But when it actually happened, when it was diapers and sleepless nights and no time for herself, she couldn't handle it." Lila's expression softened. "That must have been hard." It was. Daniel's jaw tightened. But what really got me was the way she left. No fight, no trying to work it out, just gone. Like we didn't matter enough to even try. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's been 3 years. I'm over it." Lila gave him a look that said she didn't believe him, but she didn't push. Instead, she turned back to the stove, adjusting the heat. "Do you ever worry Emma will ask about her? About why she left?" "She already has," Daniel said quietly. "I told her that sometimes people need to go on adventures, that her mom loves her but needed to find something for herself." "Do you think that's true?" "I don't know. Maybe." He shrugged. "I just didn't want her to grow up thinking she wasn't enough. That's not a weight a kid should carry." Lila turned to face him, her eyes shining. "You're a good dad, Daniel. I'm trying." "No, you are." She stepped closer, her voice firm. "Emma is lucky to have you." Daniel's throat tightened and he looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me." "I can tell." They ate dinner on the couch, plates balanced on their laps. A cooking show playing quietly on the television. Lila had made some kind of pasta with vegetables and chicken, and it was better than anything Daniel had cooked in months. "This is really good," he said between bites. "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not. I just didn't know you could cook like this." She grinned. "There's a lot you don't know about me." "Yeah?" He set down his fork, turning to face her. "Like what?" "Like I can juggle." Daniel laughed. "No, you can't." "I can. My dad taught me when I was 10. "Prove it." She rolled her eyes but stood up, grabbing 3 oranges from the fruit bowl on the counter. And then, to Daniel's amazement, she actually started juggling. "Holy shit," he said, staring. "Told you." She kept the oranges going for a few more seconds before catching them one by one, grinning triumphantly. "I'm full of surprises." "Apparently." She sat back down, closer this time, and Daniel felt the shift between them. The air seemed heavier, charged with something unspoken. "What else don't I know?" he asked quietly. Lila's smile faded, replaced by something more serious. I'm terrified of this. Of what? Of us. She set her plate aside, her hands trembling slightly. Of wanting something and having it fall apart. Daniel reached out, covering her hand with his. I'm terrified too. Really? Yeah. He squeezed her hand gently. But I think that's okay. Being scared means it matters. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. Do you think we're crazy for even trying this? Maybe. He offered a faint smile. But I'd rather be crazy with you than safe and alone. Her breath caught, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then slowly she leaned in. Daniel's heart hammered as the distance between them closed. He could see the flecks of gold in her eyes, could feel the warmth of her breath. And when her lips brushed against his, soft, tentative, testing, he felt the world narrow to just this moment. He pulled back almost immediately, his hand still holding hers. Wait, he said, his voice rough. Lila froze, her eyes wide. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have... No. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. I want to. I really want to. But not like this. Like what? Not on my couch with a cooking show in the background. He smiled, even though his heart was racing. You deserve better than that. Her eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling too. You're impossible. I know. She laughed, a watery sound, and leaned her forehead against his. Okay, not like this. Not like this, he agreed. They stayed like that for a long moment, their foreheads touching, their breaths mingling. And Daniel felt something shift inside him, something that had been locked away for years slowly opening. When Lila finally pulled back, she wiped at her eyes, laughing softly. You're going to make me fall in love with you, aren't you? Daniel's chest tightened. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet. Fair enough. They finished dinner in a comfortable silence, and when Lila left that night, Daniel stood at the door, watching her walk to her car. She turned back once, waving, and he waved back. And as he closed the door and leaned against it, he realized something. He was already falling, and for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of where he'd land. The following Tuesday, Emma asked the question Daniel had been dreading. They were sitting at the kitchen table, her homework spread out between them, simple addition problems that she kept getting distracted from. She'd drawn a smiley face in the margin of her worksheet, then added what looked like a dinosaur wearing a hat. Daddy, she said, not looking up from her drawing, do you like Lila? Daniel's pen froze midair. He'd been checking her work, but now all he could do was stare at the top of her head, at the way her ponytail was slightly crooked because she'd insisted on doing it herself that morning. Yeah, he said carefully. She's nice. No, I mean, do you like her? Daniel set down the pen. Where's this coming from? Emma finally looked up, her expression serious in the way only a 6-year-old could manage. You smile when you talk to her, like the way Prince Eric smiles at Ariel. I do not smile like a cartoon character. You do. She went back to her drawing, adding what might have been a crown to the dinosaur. It's okay if you like her. I like her too. Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't know how to navigate this conversation. Emma had never asked about him dating anyone before, probably because he never had. After Sarah left, he'd put all his energy into being a father, into making sure Emma felt stable and loved. The idea of bringing someone else into their lives had seemed impossible, but now it wasn't impossible. It was happening, and he had no idea how to explain that to a 6-year-old. I do like her, he admitted, but it's complicated. Why? Because grown-up stuff is complicated. Emma made a face. That's a dumb answer. Well, it's the truth. She considered this, her crayon moving across the paper. Is she going to be my new mom? Daniel's heart lurched. No. I mean... He stopped, running a hand over his face. Emma, Lila, and I are just... We're friends. Good friends. And maybe someday that'll turn into something else, but right now we're taking things slow. What does that mean? It means we're not rushing. We're getting to know each other. But you already know each other. Not the same way. Daniel struggled to find words that would make sense. It's like when you meet someone new at school. You might play with them at recess, but it takes time before they become your best friend, right? Emma nodded slowly. I guess. Well, that's what we're doing, taking time. She seemed to accept this, returning her attention to the homework. But after a moment, she said quietly, I hope she stays. Daniel's throat closed up. Yeah, me too. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Daniel called Lila. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm. Hey, everything okay? Emma asked me if I like you today. There was a pause. What did you say? I said yes. Then she asked if you were going to be her new mom, and I had a minor panic attack. Lila laughed softly. What did you tell her? That we're taking things slow, that we're just getting to know each other. And what did she say? Daniel exhaled. She said she hopes you stay. The line went quiet for a moment. When Lila spoke again, her voice was thick. I hope so too. This is terrifying, Daniel said. I know. I don't want to screw this up. You won't. You don't know that. Maybe not, Lila said. But I trust you, and that's enough for now. Daniel closed his eyes, leaning back against the couch. I don't deserve you. Stop saying things like that. It's true. It's not. Her voice was firm. You keep acting like you're some charity case, like I'm doing you a favor by being here. But you're not seeing what I see. And what do you see? Someone who shows up, she said simply. Someone who keeps his word, someone who puts his daughter first even when it's hard. Someone who turned me down when he could have said yes, because he cared more about what I needed than what he wanted. Daniel's hands were shaking. Lila, I'm not done. She took a breath. You think you're broken, Daniel, but you're not. You're just someone who got hurt and kept going anyway. And that's not broken, that's strong. He didn't know what to say. The words stuck in his throat, tangled up with everything he was feeling. I have to go, Lila said gently. Early meeting tomorrow, but I'll call you this week, okay? Okay? And Daniel? Yeah? Thank you for being honest with Emma, for not hiding this. I couldn't hide it if I tried. Apparently I smile like Prince Eric. Lila's laugh was the last thing he heard before the line went dead. The next few weeks passed in a strange blur. Daniel and Lila fell into a pattern that felt both natural and fragile. Dinners when Emma was with her grandmother, phone calls late at night, stolen moments that felt too good to be real. But there were cracks too, moments when Daniel's fear would surface, when he'd pull back without meaning to, and Lila would feel it even if she didn't say anything. Moments when she'd get quiet, withdrawn, and Daniel would recognize the look in her eyes, the shadow of Josh, the doubt that maybe she wasn't enough. They didn't talk about those moments, not yet, because talking about them would mean acknowledging that this thing between them was real, and real meant it could break. One Friday evening, Daniel picked Emma up from daycare and found Lila waiting in the parking lot leaning against her car. Emma squealed and ran to her, throwing her arms around Lila's waist. Lila, are you coming to dinner? Lila glanced at Daniel, uncertain. I don't want to intrude. You're not intruding, Daniel said quickly. If you want to come, you're welcome. Please, Emma tugged on Lila's hand. We're having pizza. Daddy lets me pick the toppings. Lila smiled, the tension easing from her shoulders. Well, I can't say no to that. They went to a small pizza place near Daniel's apartment, the kind with checkered tablecloths and a jukebox in the corner. Emma ordered pepperoni and pineapple, a combination that made Daniel wince, but he allowed anyway. Lila got a slice of margarita, and Daniel went for plain cheese. You're boring, Emma announced, eyeing his plate. I'm consistent, Daniel corrected. That's the same thing. Lila laughed, covering her mouth with her hand. She's got a point. Don't encourage her. They ate and talked. Emma dominating the conversation with stories about school, about her friend Mia who could do a cartwheel, about the caterpillar they'd found on the playground. And Daniel watched Lila, the way she leaned in when Emma talked, the way she asked follow-up questions, genuinely interested. It hit him then, watching them together. This was what he wanted. Not just someone to fill the empty space Sarah had left, but someone who fit, someone who made the life he'd built feel less like survival and more like something worth celebrating. But wanting it didn't make it easier, because the closer they got, the more there was to lose. After dinner, they walked back to Daniel's apartment, Emma between them, holding both their hands. She swung their arms as she walked, humming some song Daniel didn't recognize. "This is fun," Emma said. "Yeah?" Daniel looked down at her. "What's fun?" "This. All of us together." She looked up at Lila. "You should come over more." Lila's eyes met Daniel's over Emma's head, and he saw the same mix of hope and fear reflected there. "I'd like that," Lila said softly. When they reached the apartment, Daniel unlocked the door and Emma raced inside, already pulling out her coloring books. Lila lingered in the doorway, her hands shoved in her jacket pockets. "I should probably go," she said. "You don't have to." "I know, but Emma has school tomorrow, and I don't want to—" "Lila." Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Stay, just for a little while." She hesitated, then nodded. They sat on the floor with Emma, coloring in the princess book she'd brought home from school. Daniel was terrible at staying inside the lines, and Emma kept criticizing his technique, while Lila worked with careful precision, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. "You're really good at this," Emma said, peering over Lila's shoulder. "I used to color a lot when I was your age." "Did you have a favorite princess?" Lila thought about it. "Belle, from Beauty and the Beast." "Why?" "Because she liked to read, and she didn't care what other people thought of her." Emma nodded seriously, like this made perfect sense. "I like Moana, because she's brave." "That's a good choice." Daniel watched them, something settling in his chest. This was what normal felt like, what peace felt like, and it scared him how much he wanted it. An hour later, Emma's eyes started drooping, and Daniel scooped her up, carrying her to her room. He tucked her in, pulling the blanket up to her chin. "I like Lila," Emma mumbled, already half asleep. "I know you do." "Don't let her leave, okay?" Daniel's heart clenched. "I'll try, kiddo." "Promise?" "I promise." She was asleep before he left the room. Daniel stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, then closed the door quietly and returned to the living room. Lila was putting away the coloring books, stacking them neatly on the coffee table. She looked up when he entered, and there was something raw in her expression. "She asked you not to let me leave, didn't she?" Lila said. Daniel stopped. "How did you know?" "Because I heard her. The walls are thin." She sat down on the couch, wrapping her arms around herself. "Daniel, I need to say something." He sat beside her, his stomach knotting. "Okay, I'm falling for you." The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back too long. "And I know we said slow, and I know we're supposed to be figuring this out, but I can't pretend anymore. I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me." Daniel's breath caught. "Lila, let me finish." Her hands were shaking. "I'm terrified because I don't trust myself. I don't trust that I'm not just latching onto you because you're safe, because you're kind, because you didn't take advantage of me when you could have. I don't trust that this is real, and not just me trying to fix something broken inside myself." "It's real," Daniel said quietly. "How do you know?" "Because I feel it too." He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "And I'm just as scared as you are." She looked at him, tears spilling down her cheeks. "What if we're making a mistake?" "Then we'll make it together." "That's not comforting." "I know." He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "But it's the truth. I can't promise you this will work. I can't promise I won't screw it up. But I can promise I'll try. And I can promise I won't walk away when it gets hard." Lila's breath hitched. "You swear?" "I swear." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "I don't know how to do this. How to be with someone without losing myself." "Then we'll figure it out, one step at a time." "What if I'm too much? What if I need too much?" Daniel's voice was firm. "You're not too much. And even if you were, I'd rather have too much of you than not enough." She let out a choked laugh, opening her eyes. "You're really bad at comforting people." "I know, but I love you for it anyway." The words hung in the air between them, and Daniel felt his heart stop. "What did you just say?" he asked. Lila's eyes widened like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. Say it again." "Daniel? Please." She took a shaky breath. "I love you. I know it's too soon and I know we're supposed to be taking it slow, but I can't help it. I love you. Daniel pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She buried her face in his shoulder, and he felt her tears soaking through his shirt. I love you too, he whispered into her hair. She pulled back, staring at him. You do? Yeah. I've been trying not to say it because I didn't want to scare you off. But yeah, I love you. Lila's face crumpled, and she kissed him. Not tentative this time, not testing. Real. Her hands cupped his face, and Daniel kissed her back, pouring everything he felt into it. The fear, the hope, the desperate, aching need to make this work. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. That was... Lila started. Yeah. She laughed, wiping at her eyes. I can't believe I just said that. I can't believe I said it back. Do you mean it? Every word. She rested her forehead against his. This is crazy. Probably. We're going to screw this up, aren't we? Maybe. Daniel kissed her forehead. But at least we'll screw it up together. She smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it reached her eyes. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other, the weight of what they'd just admitted settling around them. And Daniel felt something shift inside him, something that had been guarded for years, finally opening. Eventually, Lila stood, reluctant. I really should go. It's late. Okay. She hesitated at the door, looking back at him. I meant it, you know. What I said. I know, so did I. She smiled, then left, and Daniel stood there for a long time after she was gone, trying to process what had just happened. He'd told her he loved her, and she'd said it back, and for the first time in 3 years he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. But the next morning, everything fell apart. Daniel was at the construction site pouring concrete for a foundation when his phone rang. It was Marcus. Hey man, Daniel said, wiping sweat from his forehead. What's up? We need to talk. Marcus's voice was tight, and Daniel's stomach dropped. About what? About you and Lila. Daniel closed his eyes. Marcus. She told me. Marcus's voice was hard. She told me you two are together. Yeah, we are. And you didn't think to mention this to me? I was going to. When, Daniel? When were you going to tell me you're dating my cousin? Daniel's jaw tightened. It's not like that. Then what is it like? It's... Daniel struggled to find the words. It's complicated. That's not an answer. I know it's not. Daniel exhaled, frustration rising. Look, I didn't plan this. It just happened. Things don't just happen, Daniel. You make choices. You're right. I made a choice. I chose her. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was cold. I asked you to be careful with her. I asked you not to mess with her head. I'm not messing with her head. Really? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you moved in on her the second she was vulnerable. Daniel felt anger flare in his chest. That's not what happened. Then tell me what happened. She was hurting, and I helped her. And somewhere along the way, we fell for each other. That's it. That's it? Marcus's voice rose. Daniel, she just got out of a 5-year relationship. She's a mess. And you... And I what? You're a single dad with your own baggage. You think this is going to end well? Daniel's hands were shaking. I think it's none of your business. She's my family. That makes it my business. She's also a grown woman who can make her own decisions. Not when she's not thinking clearly. She is thinking clearly, Daniel snapped. And she chose me. So you can either respect that or stay out of it. I can't believe you right now. Yeah, well, the feeling's mutual. Marcus hung up without another word, and Daniel stood there staring at his phone, his chest heaving. He wanted to call Lila, to warn her, but his hands were trembling too badly to dial. Instead, he shoved the phone in his pocket and went back to work, trying to focus on the concrete, on the rhythm of the labor. But his mind kept replaying the conversation, Marcus's words cutting deeper than he wanted to admit. Was Marcus right? Was Daniel taking advantage of Lila's vulnerability? Was he being selfish, pulling her into his life when she was still figuring out her own? The questions circled in his head, relentless, and by the time his shift ended, Daniel felt like he was drowning. He drove home in silence, his jaw tight, and when he walked into his apartment, he He found Lila sitting on his doorstep. She stood when she saw him, her face pale. Marcus called me. Daniel's heart sank. What did he say? That I'm making a mistake. That you're using me. Her voice was shaking. That I'm not thinking clearly. Do you believe him? I don't know. She wrapped her arms around herself. He's not wrong, Daniel. I am a mess. I am still figuring things out, and maybe I'm not thinking clearly. Lila, but I also know how I feel. She looked up at him, her eyes wet. And I know that you make me feel safe and valued and like I matter. Daniel stepped closer, his hands itching to reach for her. You do matter. Then why does everyone keep acting like I don't know my own mind? Because they're scared. He cupped her face gently. Marcus is scared I'm going to hurt you, and maybe I will, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. What if he's right, she whispered. What if I'm just using you to feel better about myself? Are you? She hesitated, then shook her head. No, I don't think so. Then that's all that matters. Lila closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. This is so hard. I know. I don't want to choose between you and my family. You don't have to. Marcus will come around. What if he doesn't? Daniel didn't have an answer for that. Because the truth was, he didn't know if Marcus would come around. And if he didn't, it would tear Lila apart. But standing there, holding her, Daniel made a decision. He wasn't going to let fear win. Not this time. Then we'll deal with it, he said. Together. Lila opened her eyes, searching his face. You promise? I promise. She kissed him, desperate and trembling, and Daniel kissed her back, trying to pour every ounce of certainty he had into it. Because no matter what happened next, he wasn't letting her go. The next 2 weeks were harder than Daniel had expected. Marcus stopped returning his calls. Lila went to family dinner at her aunt's house and came back quiet, her eyes red-rimmed. She didn't say what happened, and Daniel didn't push, but he could see the weight of it settling on her shoulders. They kept seeing each other, but the ease they'd found was gone. Every moment together felt borrowed, like they were stealing time from a clock that was running out. One Saturday morning, Daniel woke to find a text from Lila waiting on his phone. Can we talk? Not on the phone, in person. His stomach dropped. Those words never meant anything good. He texted back, Yeah. When? Today? I can come to you. Emma's with her grandmother until 3. Come over whenever. She arrived an hour later wearing sweatpants and an old college hoodie, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. Daniel let her in without a word, and they sat on the couch, a careful distance between them. I went to see Marcus yesterday, Lila said, finally. Daniel's chest tightened. How did that go? Not great. She twisted her hands in her lap. He's still angry, at both of us. He said I'm being reckless, that I'm going to get hurt. What did you say? I told him it's my choice, that I'm not a kid anymore. She looked up, her eyes pleading. But he's my family, Daniel, and he's your best friend. This is tearing him apart. I know. He asked me to stop seeing you. Daniel felt like he'd been punched. And I said no. Her voice cracked. But it's killing me. Because he's not wrong about everything. I am still figuring things out. And maybe I am being reckless. You're not. How do you know? She stood abruptly, pacing. How do you know I'm not just using you as a crutch? That I'm not going to wake up in 6 months and realize I made a huge mistake? Daniel stood too, his jaw tight. Because I know you, and I know this is real. You don't know me, Daniel. Not really. We've known each other for 3 months. So what are you saying? His voice was sharper than he intended. That we should end this? I don't know. Lila stopped pacing, wrapping her arms around herself. I don't know what I'm saying. I just know that every time I see Marcus, every time I talk to my aunt, I feel like I'm choosing you over them. And I hate that. You're not choosing, Daniel said. They're making you choose. Does it matter? Her eyes were wet. The result is the same. Daniel crossed the room, standing in front of her. Listen to me. I get that this is hard. I get that you're scared. But if you walk away because other people don't approve, you're going to regret it. You don't know that? I do. He took her hands, holding them tight. Because I've spent the last 3 years playing it safe, not taking risks, not letting anyone in, and it was lonely as hell. So yeah, this is hard. And yeah, Marcus is pissed, but at least we're trying. At least we're fighting for something. Lila's face crumpled. I don't want to lose you. Then don't. But I don't want to lose them either. Daniel's throat tightened. I can't make that choice for you, Lila. I can only tell you what I want. And I want you. I want to wake up every morning and text you something stupid. I want to sit on the couch with you and Emma and watch her draw dinosaurs. I want to build something real with you, even if it's messy and complicated and terrifying. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not strong enough? You are. He wiped a tear from her cheek. You're stronger than you think. I'm so tired, Daniel. Her voice broke. I'm tired of feeling like I have to prove myself to Josh, to Marcus, to everyone. Then stop. He cupped her face gently. Stop trying to prove anything. Just be here. With me. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch, and for a long moment they just stood there, holding each other in the quiet. Finally, Lila pulled back, wiping at her face. I need some time. To think. Daniel's heart sank, but he nodded. Okay. I'm not saying it's over, she said quickly. I just need to figure out what I want, without everyone else's voices in my head. How long? I don't know. A week? Maybe 2? It felt like an eternity, but Daniel forced himself to nod. Okay. Take the time you need. She kissed him, soft and desperate, then left. And Daniel stood in his empty apartment, staring at the door, wondering if he just lost her. The days that followed were some of the longest of Daniel's life. He threw himself into work, taking extra shifts at the site, anything to keep his mind occupied. But at night, alone in his apartment, the doubts crept in. What if Lila decided it wasn't worth it? What if the pressure from Marcus was too much? What if Daniel had pushed too hard, asked for too much? Emma noticed something was wrong. She asked about Lila twice, and both times Daniel deflected, saying she was busy with work. But Emma wasn't fooled. Did you make her mad? She asked one evening over dinner. Daniel looked up from his plate. What? Lila. Did you make her mad? Is that why she's not coming over? No, kiddo, I didn't make her mad. Then why isn't she here? Daniel set down his fork, searching for words a 6-year-old would understand. Sometimes grown-ups need space to think about things. That's all. What things? Important things. Emma frowned, clearly unsatisfied with this answer. I miss her. Yeah, so, me too. Are you sad? Daniel's chest ached. A little. Emma climbed down from her chair and walked over, wrapping her small arms around his neck. It's okay to be sad, Daddy. Daniel held her tight, his eyes burning. Thanks, kiddo. She'll come back, Emma said confidently. She has to, because she likes us. Daniel wished he had his daughter's certainty. On the 8th day, Daniel was replacing a section of drywall in a bathroom when his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. Hello? Daniel, it's Marcus. Daniel froze, the drywall knife still in his hand. Hey. Can we talk in person? Yeah. When? Tonight. My place. 7? I'll be there. Marcus hung up without another word, and Daniel stood there, his heart pounding. He didn't know if this was going to be an olive branch or a final confrontation, but either way, he had to face it. That evening, he dropped Emma off at her grandmother's and drove to Marcus's house. His hands were sweating on the steering wheel, and he had to force himself to walk up to the front door. Marcus answered on the first knock, his expression unreadable. Come in, he said. Daniel followed him inside, into the same living room where this had all started months ago. They sat across from each other, the silence heavy. I talked to Lila, Marcus said finally. Daniel's stomach nodded. Yeah? She's a mess, man. She's not eating, she's not sleeping, she's just stuck. I know. Marcus leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about her being a grown woman who can make her own choices. Okay? And you're right. Marcus exhaled slowly. I've been treating her like she doesn't know what she wants. Like she needs me to protect her from making mistakes. Daniel didn't say anything, waiting. But the truth is, I'm scared, Marcus admitted. I'm scared you're going to hurt her. Not because you're a bad guy, but because relationships are hard, and she's already been through so much. I'm scared too, Daniel said quietly. I'm terrified of screwing this up. But I'm not going to walk away just because it's hard. Marcus studied him for a long moment. Do you love her? Yes. And you're serious about this? About her? Yes. Marcus nodded slowly. Then I'm sorry for being an ass, for making this harder than it needed to be. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. You were just looking out for her. I was, but I went about it the wrong way. Marcus ran a hand over his face. She's important to me. You both are. And I should have trusted that you wouldn't hurt her on purpose. I won't, Daniel said. I can't promise it'll be perfect, but I can promise I'll try. That's all I'm asking. Marcus stood, extending his hand. We good? Daniel stood too, shaking his hand. Yeah, we're good. Marcus pulled him into a brief hug, clapping him on the back. Don't make me regret this. I won't. When Daniel left Marcus's house, he felt lighter than he had in weeks, but he still hadn't heard from Lila, and he didn't know if she'd made a decision. He drove home, his mind racing, and when he pulled into his parking lot, he found her sitting on the steps outside his building. She stood when she saw him, her arms wrapped around herself. Daniel's heart hammered as he walked toward her. Hey. Hey. Her voice was soft, uncertain. How long have you been waiting? About an hour. Daniel sat on the step, and she sat beside him, close but not touching. I talked to Marcus, she said. Me too. He told me he apologized to you. Yeah. Lila was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I want, about what I need. Daniel's chest tightened. And I realized something. She looked at him, her eyes red but clear. I've spent my whole life trying to be what other people wanted. Josh wanted me to be low maintenance, so I was. My dad wanted me to be successful, so I pushed myself into a career I didn't care about. Marcus wanted me to be careful, so I almost walked away from the best thing that's happened to me in years. Lila, let me finish. She took a shaky breath. But I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to live my life based on what everyone else thinks I should do. I want to make my own choices, even if they're messy, even if they're wrong. They're not wrong. Maybe. Maybe not. She turned toward him fully. But I want to find out. With you. Daniel felt his throat close up. You sure? No. She laughed, wiping at her eyes. I'm terrified, but I'm sure about how I feel, and I'm sure that I don't want to lose you. Daniel reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. You're not going to lose me. Promise? I promise. She kissed him then, and it felt different from before. Not desperate or uncertain, but grounded, real. When they pulled apart, Lila rested her forehead against his. I love you. I love you too. This is going to be hard, she said. I know. We're going to fight. We're going to mess up. Probably. But I want to try anyway. Daniel smiled, kissing her forehead. Then let's try. They sat on the steps for a long time, holding each other, and Daniel felt something settle inside him. Not certainty exactly, but something close to it. A belief that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. Over the next few weeks, things began to shift. Lila started coming over more often, joining Daniel and Emma for dinners, helping with homework, becoming part of the rhythm of their lives. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of doubt, still arguments about small things that weren't really about the small things at all, but they worked through it, together. One evening, Lila stayed late after Emma had gone to bed. They were sitting on the couch, her head on his shoulder, when she said quietly, I saw Dr. Brennan today. Yeah, how'd it go? Good. She played with the edge of his shirt. We talked about you. About us. Daniel's stomach tightened. What did she say? She said I seem happier, more grounded. Lila looked up at him. She also said I need to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. What does that mean? It means I keep expecting you to leave, or to realize I'm too much work, or to wake up one day and decide this isn't worth it. Daniel turned to face her fully. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. I do. He took her hand, squeezing gently, because I've been where you are. After Sarah left, I spent months waiting for the next bad thing to happen, waiting for Emma to get sick, or for my job to fall through, or for something else to go wrong, because if I was expecting it, it wouldn't hurt as much. Did it work? No. He smiled faintly. It just made me miserable. And it took me a long time to realize that waiting for disaster doesn't protect you. It just keeps you from enjoying the good things while they're here. Lila's eyes glistened. So what do I do? You stop waiting. He kissed her forehead. You trust that I'm here, that I'm staying, and you let yourself be happy. That's easier said than done. I know, but I'll remind you, every day if I have to. She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. You're annoyingly patient, you know that? I've been told. She laughed, wiping at her face. I don't deserve you. Stop saying that. It's true. It's not. Daniel's voice was firm. You deserve someone who sees you, who values you, who doesn't make you feel like you have to earn their love. And I'm going to keep proving that until you believe it. Lila buried her face in his shoulder, and he held her while she cried. Not the desperate, broken tears from months ago, but something softer, something that felt like release. When she finally pulled back, she was smiling through the tears. I'm going to hold you to that. Good. They stayed up late that night, talking about everything and nothing. About Lila's job and the project she was working on that was finally starting to come together. About Emma and the art contest at school she'd entered. About the future, tentative and uncertain but no longer terrifying. And when Lila finally left, kissing him goodnight at the door, Daniel stood there for a long time afterward, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next Saturday, Daniel took Emma and Lila to the lake. It was late October now, the trees turning gold and red, the air crisp with the first hint of winter. They packed a picnic, sandwiches and chips and the cookies Lila had insisted on baking the night before. Emma ran ahead on the trail, collecting leaves and rocks, while Daniel and Lila walked side by side. She's happy, Lila said, watching Emma. Yeah, she is. So am I. Lila glanced at him. Happy, I mean. Daniel smiled. Me too. They reached the clearing by the water, and Emma immediately started building what she called a fairy house out of sticks and leaves. Daniel and Lila spread out a blanket, sitting close together. I've been thinking, Lila said after a while. About what? About moving. Daniel's heart skipped. Moving where? Not far, just closer. My apartment is on the other side of town, and it takes forever to get here. And I spend most of my time here anyway. You want to move closer? Yeah. She looked at him nervous. If that's okay, I'm not saying we should move in together or anything, just closer. Daniel felt warmth spread through his chest. That's more than okay. Really? Really? She smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. Good, because I already looked at a couple of places. Daniel laughed. Of course you did. They sat there watching Emma play, and Daniel felt the pieces of his life finally clicking into place. Not perfectly, not without cracks, but in a way that felt right. Daddy, Emma called, running over. Look what I found. She held out a smooth, flat stone, perfectly round. That's cool, kiddo, Daniel said. It's a wishing stone. Emma turned to Lila. My teacher said if you find a round stone, you can make a wish. That's a good stone, Lila said seriously. What are you going to wish for? Emma thought about it, her face scrunched in concentration. Then she grinned. I wish for you to stay forever. Lila's breath caught, and she looked at Daniel, her eyes wide. Daniel squeezed her hand. That's a good wish, Em. Do you think it'll come true? Emma asked. Lila knelt down, pulling Emma into a hug. I think it already has. Emma hugged her back, and Daniel watched them, his chest so full it hurt. Later, when Emma had gone back to her fairy house and the sun was starting to dip below the trees, Lila turned to Daniel. Thank you, she said. For what? For not giving up on me. For seeing past all the broken parts. You're not broken, Daniel said. You never were. I know that now. She smiled. Because of you. Daniel kissed her, slow and gentle, and when they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." And as the sun set over the lake, Daniel let himself believe in something he'd thought was impossible. That sometimes broken people could find each other. That sometimes the hardest choices led to the best things. That real love didn't start with perfection or grand gestures. It started from the heart. November arrived with cold rain and bare trees, and Lila moved into an apartment 15 minutes from Daniel's place. It was a small one-bedroom on the second floor of an old building with creaky stairs and windows that rattled when the wind picked up. She loved it immediately. Daniel and Emma helped her move in on a Saturday that turned into chaos. Emma insisted on carrying boxes that were too heavy for her, and Lila kept rearranging furniture only to change her mind 5 minutes later. By the time they finished, all three of them were exhausted, sitting on the floor surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and eating pizza straight from the box. "This place is perfect," Emma announced, tomato sauce on her chin. "You think so?" Lila asked. "Yeah, it smells like cinnamon." Daniel sniffed the air. "That's the candle she's been burning for 3 hours. Still counts." Emma grinned, then scrambled to her feet. "Can I see the bedroom again?" "Go ahead," Lila said, and Emma disappeared down the hallway. Daniel leaned back against the couch, watching Lila. She looked different now, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she was wearing one of his old construction company t-shirts that she'd stolen weeks ago and refused to give back. "You're staring," she said without looking at him. "I know. Why?" "Because I'm trying to figure out how I got this lucky." She turned to him, rolling her eyes. "You're such a sap." "I know that too." Lila crawled over, settling herself between his legs and leaning back against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin on top of her head. "I'm scared," she said quietly. "Of what?" "That I'm going to wake up and this will all be gone. That it's too good to be real." Daniel tightened his hold on her. "It's real." "How do you know?" "Because I can feel you right here." He pressed his hand against her heart. "And I'm not going anywhere." She turned her head, kissing him softly. "Promise?" "Promise." Emma came running back into the room, breaking the moment. "Can we have sleepovers here?" "Please." Lila laughed, pulling away from Daniel. "We'll see." "That means yes, right, Daddy?" "That means we'll see," Daniel said, but he was smiling. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. Lila came over for dinner most nights, bringing groceries and cooking meals that were infinitely better than anything Daniel could make. She helped Emma with homework, listened to her stories about school, and somehow convinced her that broccoli wasn't actually the worst vegetable in the world. And slowly, carefully, she became part of their lives in a way that felt permanent. But it wasn't without challenges. There were nights when Lila would go quiet, retreating into herself, and Daniel would have to coax her back out, reminding her that she was safe, that he wasn't Josh, that she didn't have to be perfect. There were mornings when Daniel would wake up in a panic, convinced that Lila would realize she'd made a mistake, that she'd leave the way Sarah had. They talked through it, sometimes at 2 a.m. over the phone, sometimes sitting on his couch while Emma slept in the next room. And each time they came out on the other side a little stronger. One evening in early December, Daniel took Lila back to the lake. It was cold now, the water dark and still, the trees skeletal against the sky. They walked along the shore bundled in jackets and scarves, their breath fogging in the air. "Why did you bring me here?" Lila asked. "Because this is where you told me you loved me." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "That was at your apartment." "You told me the second time here." He smiled. "The first time we were sitting on that blanket watching Emma. You said it so quietly I almost didn't hear it." Lila's eyes widened. "I did? You did?" "I don't remember that." "I do." Daniel took her hands, holding them between his. "And I've been thinking about that moment a lot, about how scared we both were, about how we almost didn't do this because we were afraid." "Daniel, what—" "Let me finish." He squeezed her hands gently. "I've spent the last few months watching you put yourself back together, watching you figure out who you are without Josh, without anyone telling you who you should be. And you're incredible, Lila. You're strong and funny and stubborn as hell, and you make me want to be better." Her breath was coming faster now, her eyes shining. Why are you saying this? Because I want you to know that I see you, not the person you were trying to be for Josh, not the person you think you should be for me, just you, and I love every single part of it. A tear slipped down her cheek. Daniel, I'm not done. He let go of her hands, reaching into his jacket pocket. I know it's only been a few months. I know we're still figuring this out, but I also know that I don't want to spend another day wondering what if. I don't want to wait for the perfect moment because there is no perfect moment. There's just us, right here, right now. He pulled out a small box, and Lila's hands flew to her mouth. I'm not asking you to marry me, he said quickly. Not yet. But I'm asking you to keep doing this with me. To keep building something real, even when it's hard. To trust that I'm going to be here no matter what. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring with a small stone. Nothing fancy, nothing extravagant, just something that felt like them. This is a promise, he said, that I'm all in, that you're not too much and you never will be, that I'm going to show up every single day and remind you that you're worth it. Lila was crying now, tears streaming down her face. You're serious, dead serious. Daniel, She let out a choked laugh, shaking her head. You're insane. Probably. We've only been together for a few months. I know. People are going to think we're rushing. Let them. She stared at him, her expression torn between laughter and tears. Then she held out her hand. Put it on. Daniel's heart hammered as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, and when he looked up, Lila was smiling through the tears. I love you, she said. I love you too. She kissed him, hard and desperate, her hands tangling in his hair, and Daniel kissed her back, pouring everything he felt into it, the fear, the hope, the absolute certainty that this was right. When they finally pulled apart, Lila was laughing and crying at the same time. Emma's going to freak out. Probably. And Marcus is going to give you so much shit. Definitely. Are you ready for that? Daniel smiled. With you? Yeah. I'm ready for anything. They walked back to the car hand in hand, and Daniel felt something settle inside him. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of something stronger. Faith. In himself. In Lila. In what they were building together. When they got back to his apartment, Emma was waiting with Daniel's mother, who'd been babysitting. Emma took one look at Lila's hand and shrieked, You got a ring! Lila knelt down, showing her. Your dad gave it to me. Does that mean you're staying? Yeah, kiddo, I'm staying. Emma threw her arms around Lila's neck, and Daniel watched them, his chest so full it hurt. His mother caught his eye from across the room, smiling, and Daniel smiled back. This was what he'd been afraid of for so long, letting someone in, risking the stability he'd worked so hard to build. But standing there, watching Emma and Lila, he realized that stability wasn't about keeping everything the same. It was about building something strong enough to weather the changes. And this, Lila, Emma, the life they were creating together, felt stronger than anything he'd ever built before. The next few weeks passed in a blur of normalcy. Lila stayed over more nights than not, her toothbrush appearing in Daniel's bathroom, her books piling up on his coffee table. They celebrated Thanksgiving together, just the three of them, cooking a meal that turned out half-burned but still perfect because they'd made it together. Marcus came by one evening in early December, showing up unannounced with a six-pack of beer. He and Daniel sat on the small balcony, bundled in jackets, while Lila helped Emma with a school project inside. So, Marcus said, taking a swig of his beer. I heard you gave her a ring. Daniel glanced at him. Yeah. That's a big step. I know. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, You happy? Yeah, I am. Good. Marcus clinked his bottle against Daniel's. Then I'm happy for you. Really? Really? Marcus leaned back in his chair. I was an ass about this whole thing. I was so worried about Lila getting hurt that I didn't stop to think about what she actually wanted. And what she wants is you. Daniel's throat tightened. Thanks, man. Don't make me regret saying that. I won't. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Daniel felt the last piece of tension between them dissolve. Things weren't perfect, they never would be, but they were good. And that was enough. Christmas came, and with it, the first real test. Sarah called. Daniel was at the construction site when his phone rang, and when he saw her name on the screen, his stomach dropped. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Daniel, it's me. Her voice was the same, smooth, confident, like no time had passed at all. What do you want, Sarah? I want to talk. About Emma. Daniel's jaw tightened. What about her? I want to see her. For Christmas. No. Daniel, you don't get to do this, he said, his voice hard. You don't get to disappear for 3 years and then show up like nothing happened. I know I messed up. You didn't mess up, you left. You walked away from your daughter without looking back, and now you want to come back because it's convenient for you? That's not fair. Fair? Daniel's voice rose. You want to talk about fair? Emma asks about you sometimes. She asks why you left, and I have to come up with answers that won't break her heart. So don't talk to me about fair. Sarah was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. It's too late for sorry. She's my daughter too. No. Daniel's hands were shaking. She's my daughter. You gave up that right when you walked out the door. Daniel, please, don't call again. He hung up before she could say anything else. He stood there, staring at his phone, his chest heaving, and then he called Lila. She answered immediately. Hey, everything okay? No. His voice cracked. Sarah called. What? When? Just now. She wants to see Emma for Christmas. What did you say? I told her no. I told her she doesn't get to do this. Lila was quiet for a moment. Do you want me to come over? Yeah, please. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She was there in 15. Daniel let her in, and she didn't say anything, just wrapped her arms around him and held on while he fell apart. I'm so angry, he said into her shoulder. I know. She doesn't get to do this. She doesn't get to come back and mess everything up. She won't. Lila pulled back, cupping his face. Because you won't let her, and I won't let her. And Emma is safe and loved, and she has everything she needs right here. Daniel's eyes burned. What if she wants to see Sarah? What if Emma wants her mom? Then we'll deal with it, together. Lila's voice was steady. But Emma is happy, Daniel. She's thriving, and that's because of you. What if I made the wrong call? You didn't. She kissed him gently. You protected your daughter. That's never the wrong call. Daniel held on to her, letting her steady him. And slowly, the panic receded, replaced by something else. Determination. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Daniel sat down with Lila. I need to tell you something, he said. Okay. If Sarah keeps pushing this, if she tries to see Emma, it's going to get messy. There might be lawyers, court, all of it. Lila reached for his hand. Then we'll handle it. It's not your fight. Yes, it is. Her voice was fierce. Because Emma is part of your life and you're part of mine, which means she's part of mine too. So if Sarah wants to start something, she's going to have to go through both of us. Daniel stared at her, his chest tight. You mean that? Every word. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You said no when you should have. You showed up when I needed you. You loved me even when I didn't know how to love myself. She pulled back, looking at him. That's what you did. They sat there for a long time, holding each other, and Daniel felt something shift. Not just in him, but in the air around them. This wasn't just about him and Lila anymore. It was about building a family. A real one. Messy and complicated and imperfect, but real. Christmas morning came, and Emma woke them up at 6, dragging them both to the living room to see what was under the tree. They'd gone overboard with presents. Daniel's mother had warned them. But watching Emma's face light up made it worth it. Lila gave Emma a set of art supplies and a book about dinosaurs. Emma gave Lila a drawing she'd made, a picture of the three of them holding hands, labeled My Family, in careful letters. Lila cried. Daniel pretended not to. That afternoon they went to Marcus's house for dinner. The whole family was there, aunts, uncles, cousins, and for the first time Daniel felt like he belonged. Not as Marcus's friend, but as Lila's partner, as part of something bigger. Lila's aunt pulled her aside at one point, and Daniel watched from across the room as they talked. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw Lila's face light up, saw her aunt hug her tight. Later, Lila told him what her aunt had said. She said she's proud of me, that I look happier than I have in years. Lila's eyes were wet. And she said she likes you, that you're good for me. She's right, Daniel said. About which part? All of it. That night they drove home through the quiet streets, Emma asleep in the back seat. Lila's hand was laced through Daniel's, and the ring on her finger caught the light from the street lamps. Today was perfect, she said softly. Yeah, it was. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong. You don't know that. Maybe not. He glanced at her. But I'm going to keep saying it until you believe it. She smiled, squeezing his hand. You're so stubborn. I learned from the best. When they got home, Daniel carried Emma inside and tucked her into bed. When he came back out, Lila was standing by the window looking out at the street. You okay? He asked. Yeah. She turned to face him. I was just thinking. About what? About how different my life is now, how different I am. She walked over to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. A year ago, I was with Josh. I was miserable and didn't even know it. And now I'm here. With you. And I'm happy. Daniel kissed the top of her head. I'm happy too. I know we're not perfect, she said. I know there's still stuff we need to figure out. We'll figure it out. Promise? Promise. She looked up at him, her eyes serious. I want to build a life with you, Daniel, a real one. Not just dating, not just seeing where it goes. I want all of it. His heart hammered. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to be a family. You, me, Emma. I want to wake up next to you every morning and go to sleep next to you every night. I want to help with homework and pack lunches and argue about what to watch on TV. Lila, I'm not asking you to marry me, she said quickly. Not yet. But I'm asking you to think about it, about what comes next. Daniel cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. I don't need to think about it. I already know. You do? Yeah. He smiled. I want all of it too. With you. Her breath caught, and then she was kissing him, her hands tangling in his hair. And Daniel kissed her back, feeling like every piece of his life had finally clicked into place. The weeks after Christmas were quieter. Daniel and Lila started talking seriously about the future, about moving in together, about what that would look like for Emma, about whether they wanted to get married or just keep building what they had. They didn't have all the answers, but they had each other, and that felt like enough. One evening in late January, nearly a year after that 4th of July night, Daniel took Lila and Emma back to the lake. The water was frozen now, the trees bare, the air so cold it hurt to breathe, but it was beautiful in a stark, honest way. They walked along the shore, Emma running ahead to slide on the ice near the edge. Daniel and Lila followed hand in hand, their breath fogging in the air. Do you remember the first time we came here? Lila asked. Yeah. You told me about this place, about how you used to come here when you were a kid. I was so scared that day. Of what? Of letting you in, of falling for you. She looked at him, her eyes clear. But I'm not scared anymore. No? No. She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. I'm ready, Daniel, for all of it, whatever comes next. Daniel felt his chest tighten. You sure? I'm sure. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Then let's do it. Let's build something real, something that lasts. Together? Together. Emma came running back, her cheeks red from the cold. Can we make snow angels? There's barely any snow, Daniel said. So, we can still try. Lila laughed, pulling away from Daniel. She's got a point. They lay down in the thin layer of snow, moving their arms and legs, and when they stood up, the angels were barely visible, more imagination than reality. But Emma was thrilled, and that was all that mattered. As they walked back to the car, Emma between them holding both their hands, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just happiness, but peace. The kind that came from knowing you were exactly where you were supposed to be. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Daniel and Lila sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, the apartment quiet around them. I've been thinking, Lila said. About what? About that night, on Marcus's porch, when I asked you to... She stopped, shaking her head. I'm so glad you said no. Yeah? Yeah. She looked at him, her eyes soft. Because if you'd said yes, this wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't have happened. I would have woken up the next morning feeling worse, and you would have felt guilty, and we never would have gotten here. I know. You saved me that night, Daniel, not just from making a mistake, but from myself. Daniel's throat tightened. You saved yourself, Lila. I just helped you see it. No. She shook her head. You showed me what real love looks like. You showed me that I deserved more than someone who made me feel small. You showed me that love doesn't start from desperation or need. It starts from the heart. Daniel kissed her, slow and gentle, and when they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said. I love you too. They sat there in the quiet, holding each other, and Daniel let himself believe in something he'd thought was impossible, that broken people could heal, that love didn't have to be perfect to be real, that sometimes the best things in life came from the moments when you chose to do the right thing, even when it was hard. He thought about that night on the porch, about the choice he'd made, about how easily he could have said yes, could have given in, could have taken what was offered without thinking about the cost, but he hadn't. He'd seen past the desperation to the person underneath. He'd chosen her heart over his own desire, and because of that choice, they were here, together, building something real. The months that followed were filled with the mundane, beautiful routine of life. Lila moved in officially in March, her boxes taking over the apartment in the best possible way. She and Emma bonded over art projects and movie nights. She learned to braid Emma's hair the way Emma liked it, even though it took her a dozen tries to get it right. And somewhere along the way, she stopped being Daniel's girlfriend and started being part of the family. One Saturday in May, nearly a year after Lila had moved in, Daniel woke up to find her gone from bed. He found her in the kitchen, making pancakes while Emma sat at the table drawing. Morning, Lila said, smiling at him over her shoulder. Morning. He kissed her, then Emma's forehead. What's the occasion? No occasion, I just felt like making pancakes. Emma looked up from her drawing. Lila makes them better than you, Daddy. Traitor, Daniel said, but he was grinning. They ate breakfast together, the three of them, and Daniel watched the way Lila laughed at Emma's stories, the way she reached over to wipe syrup off Emma's chin, the way she fit into their lives like she'd always been there. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, Daniel found Lila on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, staring up at the stars. Hey, he said, sitting beside her. Hey, what are you thinking about? How different my life is now. She glanced at him. A year ago, I couldn't imagine being here, being happy, and now I can't imagine being anywhere else. Daniel took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. Me neither. I want to marry you, she said suddenly. Daniel's heart stopped. What? I want to marry you. She turned to face him fully, her eyes bright. Not because I need you, not because I'm scared of being alone, but because I love you, because I want to spend the rest of my life building this with you. Daniel stared at her, his chest so full he could barely breathe. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He pulled her close, kissing her hard. And when they pulled apart, both of them were laughing and crying at the same time. Is that a yes? She asked. That's a hell yes. They got married 3 months later, in August, exactly a year after Daniel had given her the promise ring. It was a small ceremony by the lake, just family and close friends. Emma was the flower girl, beaming as she scattered petals down the makeshift aisle. Marcus stood beside Daniel as his best man, and when Daniel recited his vows, his voice shook. I promise to show up, he said, looking at Lila, every single day. I promise to see you, to value you, to remind you that you're worth it. I promise to build a life with you that starts from the heart. Lila was crying, her hands trembling in his. I promise to trust you, she said, to let you in, even when it's scary. I promise to be your partner, your best friend, your home. And I promise to love you, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. When they kissed, Emma cheered and everyone laughed. That night, at the reception in Marcus's backyard, Daniel stood with Lila on the makeshift dance floor, swaying to music while Emma spun in circles nearby. We did it, Lila whispered. Yeah, we did. I'm so happy. Me too. She rested her head on his chest, and Daniel held her close, feeling like every piece of his life had led to this moment. Years later, Daniel would think back to that 4th of July night, to the choice he'd made on Marcus's porch, to the moment when he could have said yes but chose to say no instead. And he'd realize that sometimes the best things in life came from the hardest choices. That real love didn't start from desperation or need. It started from seeing someone, really seeing them, and choosing to value them over everything else. It started from the heart. And in the end, that was all that mattered.